Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for more discussion after show. So, Sam, Ant Gold, we're here to talk about Moon Knight. The very first episode. If you haven't seen the episode yet, make sure you take this, put it in your watch later, or go and check out our non-spoiler review. We overviewed the first 4 episodes. This is the first episode. We're going into full spoilers. And we're going to be talking about the psychology of what's going on with these two, technically one character in Moon Knight. But anyway, what's going on, Ant?
No, man, happy to be here and happy to review this show, man. It's a long wait. Long wait since we got that first preview.
It was.
That little taste. And Mark was like, you can wait. We got 4 more shows before that one. You can wait. You be all right.
So, that's crazy. So what's up next? Is it She-Hulk is next?
I think so, right?
It's wait, yeah, because Miss Marvel is a movie. For some reason I thought Miss Marvel was a show.
It's made for streaming movie on Disney or something like that?
I think so. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. But let's go ahead and talk about it. So first episode off the gate. And what were the highlights for you of this episode, or what was one of the things you liked? If you want me to go first, I can go first.
No, Isaac's acting, man, it was on point. This was some like high tier level acting brought to the TV. He nailed this role, the different mannerisms and little quirks of his different personalities. I was sold on him being 2 different people. He could have played twins for all I know. So that was cool for me. The special effects, the production value in these things is something we're not really just used to seeing on TV before Disney came around. You know what I mean? Maybe HBO and then Disney, but they make the most of it. I also like that we weren't in New York. That we didn't start in New York.
Thank you.
So this takes place in London for the most part. So just seeing the different locations in London and then that village, it just felt good. It felt like you could breathe a little bit. You know what I mean? Like just see a little bit more of the world. So yeah, man, those are some of the highlights for me.
Yeah, for me, it was the tone, man. Like it was weird because the show, and you can see right here, this is the Egyptian god that gives Steven / Mark their power in Khonshu. And when Khonshu first shows up, it's a horror vibe, bro. Like this man, Oscar Isaac, was running for his life. He was like, he thought everything was cool. He was just chilling in the elevator. All of a sudden, you see the blinking lights, and this thing is just still coming. And you're like, is this real? Is this in his mind? Like, I loved how trippy this was. Off rip, you knew, him like, strapped himself to the bed. You knew that he kind of had like little mannerisms. But if you were really listening, he was forgetting things, or things were misplaced, or times or dates were off. And the moment I think that really messed me up that I thought was so cool was all of a sudden, like, he was just in a completely different place that he didn't know where he was. He had a gun in his hand, and every single moment he was blinking out, and just dead bodies were around. And so you didn't know what was going on. And I think that was really interesting because that was Marvel allowing the violence to kind of be ramped up without being overkill, because they didn't really show a lot of the necessarily kills, but it was very violent. So it was horror-esque, it was psychological thriller, and it was very violent at times. And I really truly like that.
Like some of the best horror movies back when we were kids, they didn't show you exactly everything that happened, but you got the gist of what happened. Right. And what goes to your mind is going to be much better than anything. Like they say, goes in your mind is going to be much better than anything they put on the screen. Like they can't capture, like, oh man, I can just imagine this carnage just happened. Like, and some of the things is you get around, since we've seen thousands of car chase scenes at this point, right? At different locations, things like that. But an interesting take is we're filling in the blanks because we've seen this so many times in different movies, but we're also seeing the anxiety that's coming up in him because he doesn't know like what is going on. So you're filling in the blanks of what's going on, and you must have turned the car around, and you're driving backwards. We've seen that plenty of times in movies, but this is like a little different spin because we're coming from his perspective.
Right.
So I thought that was, and it was like a horror movie, like and seeing. what I think we sometimes forget is people who are trying to keep it together by themselves, we don't know
Right.
what they're going through. So
Right.
all we see is somebody showing up late, or someone acting nervous, or someone not feeling comfortable talking, or they're looking down, or their uneasiness makes us uneasy. We don't see how much time and and effort it takes for them just to go about the day normally without an episode or something. And I like how we got to see what he was doing, even trying to stay up because he was afraid of going to sleep and what that meant. So I don't know. I thought that was great little touches they could, because they could have done a lot simpler job to demonstrate that, but they did a lot of good touches.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a talking point. So just the backdrop, even in the beginning of it, Steven is kind of like this geeky, archaeological curator at this museum. He seems to love his job. He seems really bubbly, but he doesn't really have any friends. He doesn't even have a social life, really. And even like, I think one of the receptionists is giving him a lot of crap. And all of a sudden, like, he has this real random conversation with this little girl. And the little girl kind of alludes to, I'll see you again, yada yada yada, like, and you're kind of like, well, has he talked to this little girl before? Because he didn't know who she was, but she
Right.
was kind of like presenting something. And then you start to realize that now, Oscar Isaac's character Steven is not just Steven in there, that there's two other entities in him that we know so far, and one of them is Mark. Mark is something that is an elite mercenary, I guess the best way I can kind of give him. And he is a no nonsense kind of dude. Like, whatever the situation is coming at him, he will take care of it to his own detriment at times. And like, you start to realize that those times where he was blacking out, like, that was him taking over. We just didn't get to see it, but it all came to a head when they finally officially met Ethan Hawke's character Arthur. Arthur is this dude that also has some kind of weird abilities. In his forearms, you can see the balance and scales. He would touch somebody, and depending on how the scales would go, he would either let them go or they would die and perish. And I think this is when he was at the village, and Oscar Isaac's character was looking, it's like, what in the world's going on? And he tried to escape, and he tried to touch him, and it didn't even matter. The scales kept going back and forth because he realized there was other things going on within Steven. So
But
go ahead.
well, no, I was gonna say, besides the scales, was there anything else in the scales when they touched him? I know I saw the scales move, but couldn't see. Like, you ever hear that Egyptian myth? It could have been Nubis or something. I'm not too up on the pantheon, but like, you put your heart and when you die, they put your heart and your feather on a scale, and if the feather outweighs your heart, then you're good, you're golden. You go to wherever the if not, then you go into the void somewhere. So I wonder if that was based on that. This actually was really curious to look up some of these gods and mythos.
I think that there had to have been a correlation to it, because when the scale off balance for either a girl or a guy, I think it was a girl, it turned red and she perished. Like, the life literally was sucked out of her. Whereas the other guy, he kind of just let him go, which was really interesting. But again, there's a lot of things going on with the MCU with this. This is the thing I said is, even in my non-spoiler, this is very different
Yeah.
from way MCU kind of rose. And yeah, they've alluded to a Panther god. Yes, they've alluded to, of course, the demigods and the Norse gods, but this is very different. And it still keeps to like the Marvel blueprint, so to speak, with the tongue-in-cheek, comedy here or there, and like the random action moments, but there's some real otherworldly things going on that I don't think they kind of tapped into. Because like, it's one thing like talk around like magic, and mysticism. It's a whole nother thing, like the route they're going with this one. But the reason why I really was excited about, Ant being a part of this is talk about the psychological profile of this character is Steven / Mark. I don't even know who's the source. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know who's the person in who. Is it started with Mark and then in Steven, or was it Steven in with Mark? I guess we'll find that out later on as the seasons go by. But from your perspective, and like just looking at, I guess how it started, there was a couple different things that kind of came to my mind. So I was kind of like, maybe, he was worried about sleepwalking, Is that something that would be typical of somebody that sleepwalks to make sure that they don't hurt themselves or whatnot? That he might have an actual sleeping disorder, or what is it? It's, I guess, psychologically, like the profile of this character that you can kind of pick apart, or certain things you would like to go into that you've noticed about the way they're kind of playing him up in this show.
All right. So what they're talking about is dissociative identity disorder, which most people call like multiple personality disorder. Is kind of like the common phrase people use. So one of the things for the criteria for that is the presence of more than one distinctive personality. Memory variations can be a part of it too. So the memory loss could be part of that because there's one personality takes over, the other one can. I have read articles on you could have one personality have high blood pressure and the other one doesn't. I think I read about a case of addiction, like one had an addiction, the other one just didn't. I think I even heard of a case of one personality having diabetes and the other one not having it. So now I know there used to be some debate on whether these were real conditions or not. As far as I've known, I have only been around one person that I think had that diagnosis, and it was pretty interesting. So what we're seeing with this character is the time loss, the memory variations. Those are common symptoms. Definitely the multiple personalities, and also the hinting of, we don't really know the cause of it, but some of the things that we see as common factors would be extreme childhood trauma of physical, sexual, some kind of abuse in there. Could be drug use. So right now they've shown us the time loss, memory loss, and the distinct personalities, the very distinct personalities. Even so much so that you have different accents, which was really interesting. So that's what we're seeing so far. So I mean, somebody picked up a DSM-5 and read this diagnosis and put it in the show, and good job on that. This is what I kind of wanted from the Hawke. If you look at the Hawke comic books versus what they did in the show, this is the kind of stuff I wanted with that character, because the Hawke has multiple personalities residing in himself. So and that's a good question. We don't know who the prime personality is. We don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
Who, I mean, for all we know, we know that I think Steven brought up a mother, right? Did he bring up his mother?
I think he did. So it's weird. So he had a conversation on the phone with somebody that we don't know just yet, but he didn't have any recollection of who she was. He never heard her before, but she seemed as though she knew Mark. Like, as a matter of fact, she kind of seemed like she knew all about Mark, but it freaked him out. He hung up. But I do think that he did mention something about a mother. I can't remember the specifics behind it, but yeah.
The other symptoms would be like depression, anxiety, which he definitely has.
He had a lot of it.
Yeah. So so it's kind of like he's the personality that gets all those other symptoms. Well, Mark's the more functioning one. So yeah, and it'd be really curious about who was there when they first got introduced to whoever they got to the magic system of this universe.
Right. And also, I'm gonna say this nicely, I think Mark might be a cheater. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that.
Okay.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that, because
you with. That's all.
we can't go there yet. We can't go there yet. We'll talk about it later. But no, I think that those are really good points. It's just, this is the thing. I want to make sure that I'm not giving Marvel a pass, because I never really give Marvel a pass. I'm entertained by all Marvel products for the most part. It's whether or not which one of them sets it aside and tries to elevate and innovate, right? And I think that one of the things in allowing a character like Steven to really kind of be us in the situation is that, realistically, if you got a gun in your hand and all of a sudden, like, it disappears and you see blood on your hands now, you would start to have huge anxiety, a lot of different trauma. Like, he's seeing a lot of death around him very quickly. And I'm wondering, how is that affecting him psychologically? Like eventually, maybe he start get used to it, but it's got to be terrifying. You know what I mean? Like thinking about the fact of you having another personality in you outside of just the abilities, which we'll get to the very last thing that happens at the end of this episode, but just who he is. I don't know. Like, how do you think he's processing the reality of what's going on? Do you think is it that he's in the denial phase, that this can't be real, or is it just he can't accept it or deal with it right now? I was curious your perspective.
When you see people that know the beginning stages of they're having hallucinations or delusions, and even if they can catch themselves, they're having it to get back to reality, but they're still intrusive into how they perceive the world. And you see them do coping skills for himself. Like I mean, I know it's Marvel, but like typically you might even see somebody start drinking or using marijuana or something like that to help cope with some of the symptoms he's having, because hallucinations too are also the diagnosis for DID. So and you can't tell what's real, what's not. You're losing time. Imagine all that was happening to you, and you have awareness enough to know what's happening to you. We would all be nervous. We would all have issues finding connections. We'd be careful about even trying to have a connections, because the closer someone gets to us, the closer they get to knowing that something's off about us, right? Like you said, at some point, he can't have a relationship if he has chains on his bed, right?
Right.
Which is not necessarily true, people, but but it would be Sky's play a different way. That's all. But yeah. So but that nervousness, and even who was the only person he confided in was the silent statues or whatever, which I didn't really get was a statue at first. but
right.
But the living statue, not silent statue, the living statue, right? Somebody doesn't come back, he's reflect on. Man, I would pick a different spot if I was that guy, though. Like if I was that living statue, I would definitely pick a different spot to apply my trade. But yeah, I think that and I think that he portrayed that really well. I think like I said, his acting was on point, because you would be nervous. You'd have little ticks. You would have some self-esteem issues. You would think, why would somebody want to be with me? You would like not know how to act if a beautiful woman was like, hey, we meeting up tomorrow or tonight. I think it was tomorrow. Yeah. So I don't know. I enjoyed all that. I was eating just the acting of it.
Yeah. So, we've kind of broken down the actual human side of this, but then, take that and tag on seeing stuff like this. Pure nightmare fuel that you're not just actually seeing while you're dreaming, but you're actually walking around seeing an entity that presumably also is inhabiting your body as well. That's why we were getting to that he has two different entities, and that is this Egyptian god. Adding that, right. Adding that to the mix. Now, I would assume terror would be, something that he's harshly dealing with, because you don't know, one, what does this mean? What is going to happen to me? Like, am I going actually truly crazy? Because now it's not just like, oh, another part of you is talking to yourself. Like, now you're seeing something that is visually saying, I have complete control over you and you don't have a choice, yada, yada, yada. So how do you kind of dissect that? Like, it's his reaction to that, and what that really would truly mean if somebody in real life were dealing with not only another entity that looks like them, sounds kind of like them, but isn't them, but then now something completely different is dangerous.
So I would also like to put another layer on that. I can't imagine doing mental health in the world of Marvel would be easy. Because how do you tell somebody, no, that ain't real? In a world where you have seen green monsters and gods and holes in the atmosphere, and depending on when this takes place, giant celestials peeking at the earth real quick,
Right.
like how do you die? Like, that's impossible. We got to medicate them. Like, how do you? Is it impossible? I don't know. I worked with somebody who was doing schizophrenia once, who used to work for the government, and they were like, "You don't know how much the government has on us, and how much they're watching us." And I was like, "I mean, I can't refute them. Like, I can't say I can't say they're not doing stuff like that or messing it up. Not that it's my place to say that, but yeah, So it's I think that's another layer in the Marvel universe as it gets more complex and things become more um out in the open, because these things aren't in the Marvel universe, these things aren't hidden. Like in some other universes, like if it's the Harry Potter universe, for instance, like muggles don't really know what's going on. There might be some odd thing every once in a while or some tabloid stuff. In the Marvel universe, nope. I don't even know why. Like I imagine I mean, technically, you're dealing with like a 9/11 situation like every 2 years, but on a global scale. So I wouldn't even know how to pretend that. But I know that was longer than what you wanted. But yeah, just seeing those hallucinations, and not even that, knowing that other people aren't seeing them. Like the older woman in the apartment building, when he was in the elevator, I think he knew she can't see this. I can see this. My terror is very real, but I'm also trying to keep it together because I know they can't see that. I don't want to get locked away somewhere. Like let me come up with some lame lie or something like that to get over it. I imagine functioning to be very challenging. And we probably all end up with straps on our beds and probably medicating ourselves to sleep. So we would have to see this stuff.
Yeah, that lady was terrified. She was looking at that man like, I don't know what's wrong with him, but let me get to my building.
I think that was a random door. I think that was a random door she was knocking on again.
True. I agree. I completely agree. I definitely will say that I think Oscar did his homework. When you hear Mark and when you hear Steven, it's not just how you hear them, it's how they perceive each other. Their mannerisms are completely different. And it's what's weirder is their reactions to this God that also inhabits them, their reasonings for continue to push forward. So I thought all that was fascinating. So now going into the last bit of it, Steven is running in the museum terrified because now a dog creature is trying to eat him. And it gets really horror. Like it goes the horror route, which is cool. I liked it. But then, I was kind of like, he gonna have to do something. And like Mark was like, look, you need me, bro. Like, can you please just give me the control? And it was weird because it reminded me a little bit of Split. With James McAvoy, where James McAvoy was like, I need the beast. Like the beast is gonna protect Kevin.
Yeah.
And it was just fascinating to see the transfer, because it's like, it's cool because it's a superhero, but it's different in that who's really in control here? Like, because whose agenda is really benefiting? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's self-preservation and survival. But the whole fight, like, it's almost like ultimately Steven is like, you know what, I'm giving control over to this person, and I don't know if I'm gonna come back. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's a very fascinating thing, because it's so easy to kind of just get swept up in the action of it versus the reality of what he's submitting to this other person that he doesn't know.
And you already know you've lost days at least at a time. Like, know you've lost days or whole weekends to the fact that you missed out on your chance. I'm gonna hope that I'm sorry. Like, I hope Mark was just like sitting like Steven needs some release. Let me just set this up for him real quick. Like, oh man, we gotta go. All right, well, next time. So maybe he's not a cheater. Maybe he was just trying to help the Steven personality out. Maybe.
Look, you know what? We're gonna talk about that next episode because the next episode introduces a certain somebody, and we're gonna get into all that because yeah.
So, but again, I got really great Hawke feels from that of like, let me come out and save us, but do I come back? Another thing I liked was just the framing and the production value of the fight, just to see how terrified the creature, how the tables turned real quick and the creature was trying to get out.
Right.
But I also like the weight of the punches and how they animated the cape and everything like that when he was coming down on the creature. It was very like Batman-esque type of thing, and even the rollout. So That was a good introduction to Marvel's newest superhero.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a really good introduction. I mean, I think that's one of the first things that we saw from the very first trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish we kind of hadn't seen it there. I wish we would have
Right.
just, kind of saw it while it was actually happening. But, they got to sell us,
I'm
even though
still
they
waiting
don't
for
have
the
to.
I'm still waiting for the clean suit to come out that we saw in the trailer. I need that in my life, like that. Like when he's like, I don't need these robes. This is my business attire.
Hey, look, you already know, smooth criminal.
Right.
But yeah, nah, I think it was a good first intro episode. Do you feel like, and you can have your opinion. Do you feel like it takes away from not seeing Mark's perspective every single time when they would switch? Because we never saw Mark in control until the very end. We always saw the aftermath of Mark in control. Do you think that took away from like the intensity? Do you feel like, they kind of like saved a little bit of the violence and the tone a little bit doing it that way, or do you think it was proper to focus in on Steven in the context of the rest of this episode?
I think for us, for this first episode, we needed to feel what Steven was experiencing and the anxiety and the stress of not knowing what's going on. And we needed to see that the no, I don't want this. Here, take it. I am sorry. I am not a spy. I am not a who? Like, I think we need to see that anxiety so we could get what he's going through for later on, so we have context later on going forward in the series. That would be my take on it. There was this game on the GameCube, Into Darkness or something like that, where you would slowly go insane with the character you were playing. So the description of the screen would melt. Sometimes the station would act like it deleted your save file or whatever, as your insanity meter went up as you went through these horrors or whatever. And if it got too bad, you had to switch to another character. So I always go to something like that where a show can like heighten how disorienting the psychosis can be, and I thought that was a really good thing to show us in this.
Yeah, so I'm really am torn. Like, a part of me is kind of like, I think it was for the betterment of the story as a whole to focus in on Steven, but it's kind of like, there are horror movies. There are certain movies that I kind of like, man, I wish you would just kind of go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like with some of that, I was like, man, can you just show me like a small little, like Steven, like closing his eyes or sleep or something like that. And he dreaming about the things that Mark did or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then you're like, he's still tortured. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, he didn't get to see it. But then when he dreams, he sees like something like that. Because I don't want to take away from the weight of what just happened. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like episodes like this carry on to where people perceive how the rest of the show is going to be. And so I always was hoping that this show just kind of went for it. But I also knew the director said that we pushed it as far to a R rating as we could, but we still kept it PG-13. He said something along the lines of, this is not as violent as what the Netflix shows were. You know what I'm saying? That he has to be, but I do know Moon Knight don't play.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I don't know.
And I think that would have been cool. I didn't think about it before, but that would have been a cool idea of that reason why he didn't want to sleep, because he was having these violent dreams, and maybe instead of maybe instead of fighting like whatever the cult people are, he dreams about, he replaces his boss, his nagging boss, with the person the other personality killed or whatever. And that could be why he was very, very scared. No, I didn't think about that, but that's good. But again, they could have just been trying to establish Steven as a character, right? So to make sure that he's and so because if we're going to be going between different personalities, you might need to make sure, because he's not going to be the action not the action effect, but yeah, the effective action personality in this stuff. Like, so we gotta get to know to like him and we kind of root for him, because otherwise, if we just go straight to the other personality, be like, I'm tired of this Steven personality. I don't want to see the Steven personality. I need that. Where's Mark at? Mark gonna get this done. So you gotta give him some value, and I think they started showing some of his skills in this. His his knowledge base. So I think that's important. Like Bruce Banner got to get some shine too. You know, Hawke can punch some stuff. If you want to disarm some stuff, you might need Bruce. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think James McAvoy's performance again, going back to Split, like he had a couple different personalities. Like Dennis, I think was the character that had glasses, and Dennis was kind of like, the big brother type of really silent but cool, calm. And then there was another one that was a female that was the motherly, protective type. Like there's ways of making these characters that really pop, and come out and people gravitate towards. So hopefully they do the same thing or take from that luxuries of that.
Here's a thought: since Mark is the one that's getting into these violent situations, maybe Mark had too much trauma, and the Steven personality is the, I have this.
The byproduct of all the
because my regular life is traumatic with guns and bullets and stuff like that. If I'm in a life with bullets and guns and day-to-day violence, I probably want to watch a peaceful movie or listen to some different type of music. Than I'm probably not about, like, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does actually.
So maybe in a weird way, the Steven personality is the protecting one. Because he gets to have a normal job, go in day to day, a boring job. Maybe he loves history. Maybe he loves Egyptian art or mythology. He gets to be around that all day. He's not hyper aggressive. Like, I don't know. That's just a thought.
Yeah, we're gonna go into a lot of different things, you guys, next week, because again, we've seen the first 4 episodes. We're gonna maybe talk about, like, what does it mean to have a relationship with somebody with schizophrenic personality disorder, or what does it mean to be functioning when the other person is kind of in control. We're gonna talk about a lot of different things and kind of where this is gonna go moving forward with this series, and we'll also maybe focus a little bit about Arthur. Like, you haven't seen that much about Arthur just yet, but he plays a bigger role than what you think, so that's all I can really say. But yeah, what do you rate this episode 1?
If it was 1 to 5, I give it a 4. I think it had everything for me. I think now that you said it, I would have liked to see a little bit more of the other side. But as a starter, a pilot episode or starter episode, I think we got off to a good start. I'm loving the visuals. I'm loving the style choices, and I'm loving his acting. I don't know, like I'm a fanboy of his. You know what? But you know what? He never does a bad job. He never does a bad job with what he's given. You know what I mean? Like he's been in some bad movies, but he always gives a good performance.
So I'm gonna bring it up.
I know.
I'm gonna bring it up.
I know.
What about? What about a certain X-Men movie?
I mean, it's not the apocalypse I wanted, but he gonna do so much with the script he's given, man. Only so much. It hurts. It hurts a little bit. I mean, even Tom Hardy's been in some bad movies. But he always delivers a good point. He always gives his point. And I think that I'm looking forward to seeing him work this character going forward, because I think it's gonna be a lot for him to work with. And you know what? This is the first Marvel show that I think can bridge the gap between the Netflix shows like Daredevil and the regular MCU show, because it's around that edge of Marvel gritty, like Midnight Suns or whatever, grittiness that you get from Daredevil. But it's a little softer, like a little softer. So I'd be interested. I think this fits in perfectly.
Yeah, I think it's perfect for him. It's the perfect kind of role for him to kind of, put him into that mode. The weird thing is this, bro. We had, what was it, last year? I don't know what time. We went through Doom, right? Most of the cast for Doom are in some way, shape, or form connected to Marvel.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of them. Zendaya, him, what's my man? Yes. The Skarsgård. Because he's with Thor. Like, it's a lot of different ones that are connected. Now, it's funny because Momoa is DC, and I'm actually rooting for Timothy Chalamet to be Nightwing or something like that. But that's for another.
Oh, he'd be good. He'd be really good. Well, you know how I feel about Dune, so I can't wait. I can't wait. But yeah, I'm here for the season, man. They got me with this season.
Yeah.
Did you have any complaints? Did you have any negatives besides the switch? And I think that's more of a nitpick. It wasn't really a complaint on your part, right?
So I'm a 4 out of 10 too, or 4 out of 5. Now I said 4 out of 10. Man, that's somebody about to be upset.
I was like, oh,
4 out of 5 or 8 out of 10, whatever you want to call it. I think it was a good opening. I kind of was looking for it to being a little bit more like not edgy, but just like, you know, balls to the wall, just violent and psychologically disturbing. And I think I got a lot of the horror vibes, but I didn't get a lot of the disturbing side just yet. But it left an impression that it could get that route. The worse things get. I think that for me, Arthur as a character, he wasn't introduced. Arthur as a character wasn't introduced well just yet. It wasn't as though like I disliked him, but it was like, am I really afraid of him? You know what I mean? Like I don't look at him and be like, man, this dude just put glass in his shoes.
No.
Okay.
Not
he's
yet.
scary. You know, so it's like it wasn't anything that kind of like hit me just yet, but it was different enough. And again, like you said, it's not in New York. It's in a different set of location. Is you know, visually it looks really beautiful. The action, the way they handled the action in the first episode was pretty good. I just I always get worried about Marvel trying to stick to a certain blueprint. I always get worried about that. I want them to kind of like catapult and take chances. And it's just interesting, the timing though. And I don't know if you want to talk towards this, but the fact that all the Netflix shows are now on Disney Plus just in time before Moon Knight. Do you think that was by choice? Because it fits the tone of Moon Knight? Do you think it's gonna lead into something? I'm just curious your perspective on that.
I'd be very interested in seeing like a Daredevil Moon Knight team up. I think it'd be much better than Defenders when we got. But I was thinking something when you were talking. A little off topic, but I also felt like I got a meal of an episode in this one. I don't feel like it was a short episode. Like, you know, when you're watching Loki or Hawkeye, I felt like the episode went by real quick, and it was like, oh, it's the ending. This one, I feel like I got a complete episode for a week-to-week episode. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. No, I get it. It does feel like a full-on episode. You're right. Like most of them kind of feel like, oh, that was 20 minutes of my life gone. You know, this kind of felt like, I don't know how long the episode was, but it felt like a full good hour of wait.
So yeah,
Yeah, that was it.
Oh yeah, but I think if they didn't time it, it worked out. The Egyptian gods did something together, and they made it perfect timing for this, because I could definitely watch this, and if I'm still just like, what else I want to watch, I can definitely click over to Daredevil after this and get that same vibe. You know what I mean? I could still feel that. I could even still, if you want to talk about mental health, you can switch over from this and watch the first season. Jessica Jones. Yes, Jessica Jones. That first season is excellent for that. So I definitely could switch. And I actually might start doing that. Get me some Moon Knight. But I didn't even feel a need. Like I said, this was I felt like I got me a complete entertainment meal. I could watch Moon Knight and go do something else. You know what I mean?
Right.
So good job, Marvel. Good job. You got me for another season or something.
Oh my goodness. So we are gonna go, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you guys enjoyed our live discussion. Or technically it's not live, technically it's pre-recorded. But hope you enjoyed our discussion after show.
Live to me.
1 Moon Knight. We may get into the chat and just kind of talk with you guys and interact with you guys. I may start doing giveaways. I hadn't planned anything, so I'm not going to do anything on this one. But maybe the next one. Maybe there's going to be a giveaway next one. Make sure you follow us on social media. It's in the description bar below. Anybody that's a part of our social media, you guys will get the update when the gift stuff comes. So I'm going to leave it there. So hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back a little bit later. Peace, people. Filing out the top of I can see the skyline, 50 mile radius on my timeline.